Coming to you live from the Ditch Diggers Manor screening room. It is the Ditch Diggers with guest host Kameron Hurley, guest host Margaret Dunlap, and Mur Lafferty in Ditch Diggers Season 8, Episode 16.
Ditch Diggers appear, and ain't no wannabes here, with some not so nice advice for your writing career. To be clear, no punches will be pulled, but the punch may be spiked. How they like before they get on the mic. To my left, we got the mighty Mur Lafferty, and if I piss her off, believe me, she'll come after me. And her co-host, Matt Evan Wallace, on the right. Yes, she may be half as hype as she can take him in a fight. So settle in, folks, buckle in and boot up. Time to meddle in a way to make your writer shut up. It's hard work, but the perk is that it's fun and exciting. Facebook will still be there when you're done writing. Ditch Diggers! Ditch Diggers!
So, hey Kameron, hey Margaret, what's going on? How are things? We're Ditch Diggers this week. It's after dark. There's booze. I can't be responsible for anything.
That sounds fair.
Ditch digging every week, Mur. That's how the ditches get dug.
Exactly. Yep.
One ditch at a time.
That's right. One ditch at a time.
Best advice you're going to get on this whole podcast. All right, you're done. That's all we got.
One
One at a time. There we go.
Yes, exactly. So, if you were watching last month, Kameron and I were on the show and talking about, we got on it kind of went to the topic of Hollywood, and we were talking about what we understood about Hollywood money, which was what we had experienced, but not much else. And then we were kind of wondering, and Kameron's just like, why don't we just invite Margaret on? Because, Margaret's a Hollywood person and scriptwriter and knows all of this money stuff and is magical and stuff. And so we got Margaret back on the show. Very, very happy to have you. I'd introduced this to the chat, but not to the actual recording. If you're new to Margaret Dunlap, she's worked on Dark Crystal, Middleman, a lot of other shows, and is a short story writer and has an upcoming short story in Apex. And I know Margaret through prose because we were on the Book Burners. See, I want to say Ditch Diggers because it's got the exact same tone.
Yep.
Book Burners project together. And so Margaret and I have been friends for a while, and she's so smart.
Thank you, Mur. Awesome.
How was the Writing Excuses cruise?
The Writing Excuses cruise was really great. I did one sort of workshop presentation slot, and they kindly gave me the slot at the morning of our first day at sea.
Oh, when everyone's fresh and not hungover?
Everyone's fresh. Few people are hungover. I can give the presentation and then relax about the presentation because it's already done. And also because I was originally scheduled on the 2020 Writing Excuses cruise, which did not happen because I'd been a guest host over there in 2019. And so there's sort of the thing of is anyone going to remember that I was on that podcast for a season? So it was nice to be able to kind of reintroduce myself so that people weren't, why is she as an instructor again? We're sitting at her table at dinner tonight and what the hell? So yeah, it was really nice and the presentation went well. I talked about how we have this illusion that there is a career path in creative careers because, in fiction, you write some short stories and you get a lot of forum rejections, and then you start getting nicer forum rejections, and then you get personal rejections, and then you start getting acceptances, and then maybe you get nominated for an award, and then there's a book deal, and then a bigger book deal, and then, it becomes a bestseller, and they make a TV show, and it's everything is great. And the fact is that, most careers don't look like that because, people's careers go in unexpected directions, or it stalls out at some point, or, not everybody gets to have the number of writers compared to the number of bestsellers with TV deals is an enormous ratio.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I was gonna take that path, and then about 2010 or 11, I realized that I had been building my writing career. I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
Because I had been networking via my podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought I was interviewing people. But, like, I was interviewing people and they were remembering me, and suddenly I had a network of writers that I knew. And I'm like, wow, if I planned on doing this, I probably would have wimped out a long time ago.
Yeah, it's like, in my talk, I walked people through, like, from 20 years ago when I started, did the graduate screenwriting program at USC, not a blanket endorsement of film school. It worked out to me. Your mileage may vary. In fact, it almost certainly will. But it was sort of like, if you want to write for animation, spend 15 years knocking your head against various walls. And then it's like, well, no, that's not a repeatable approach. It's just the opportunity that I was still on the corner when that opportunity showed up. And I found the thing that I like doing and that Hollywood would also like me to do.
Let's check in. How are you, Cameron? Tell me about stuff. What's going on?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I actually sent the first half of my book to my agent, which was amazing, right? Yeah.
I can't wait for this book, Cameron. I really can't.
I know. It's gonna be one of those ones where it's just like, it better be fucking amazing after 3 years. I was telling some of the folks I work with, I was like, well, it was originally due in like September 2020. So give me some grace. I'm giving myself some grace. That said, it better not take another fucking 3 years to write the second half of the book. That's all I'm saying. I gotta get paid.
Yeah.
I gotta get paid over here.
Sorry, go on.
But no, things are good with that. And in fact, it was funny because, working right into this podcast this week, my agent was like, oh, talking to somebody from Disney Hulu, and they're on it about Light Brigade again. I'm like, I bet they fucking are. They're always on the Light Brigade. Will they sign a check? No, they will not sign a check. Not right now anyway.
Cameron's bitter.
But we agreed after my go rounds with Everyone Loves Light Brigade. It's getting it, the usual. This is what I explain Hollywood to people, Margaret, and you're gonna have to tell me if this is correct or not. But I say the difference is, like, if you want to sell a novel, you go and you write a novel and you throw it around to a bunch of people and you say, hey, do you want it or not? Hollywood is, you put together like a little squad, like a little team. Oh, I got a screenwriter here. I got this novelization thing here. I've got this possible director, this production company. And then we go and pitch it to people.
And they have to get a blowout. They have to get blowouts beforehand. I heard that.
Right. Oh, yeah. Full makeup and the whole thing. Anyway. But then you go and you do the little dance. And it's like, well, okay. Then they say, well, maybe this, maybe that. Everyone says, yeah. But the thing is, like, it's all about putting together that team and finding that team. And I know when I talked to you, Margaret, I was like, I'm so frustrated because I'm on these calls all the time with these, again, production companies everyone's heard of, where I'm thinking, oh, this is amazing. It's going to become something. And it's just talk. And I was like, Margaret, why does Hollywood just want to talk so much? And your answer was?
My answer was, it's like, partially they want to talk to you because they want to figure out what kind of human being you are. And it's like, are we getting in bed with somebody who is going to, show up, right before we start shooting and say, guys, I really don't like the way we're going with this. And I think we shouldn't do it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have heard so much about Hollywood assholes who do exactly that and still get paid. Why don't they want... What is the problem with an author doing it that they wouldn't listen to anyway?
Do Hollywood assholes do that?
I don't know. I've heard they do a lot of things.
It depends on who you are. But it is like but yeah, it's just like most people in Hollywood, like most people in most places, don't actually want to work with assholes. Like, you have to be you either have to have a lot of money or be extraordinarily good at what you do to actually survive at, levels of being an evil person, which certainly people do, frequently because once they have a level of money and success is when they allow themselves to, manifest the evil that they were trying to keep down. for a long time, but like, I have run into, like, I'm not sure the Hollywood abusive jerk quotient might be slightly higher than in other businesses, but I think only because of, the possibilities of money and perceived prestige. Like any other business that you can get rich and be an influential person and like get, restaurant reservations and all of that. Like if that's what you want, Hollywood is an avenue I suppose you could pursue, but like it's probably easier to become a stock trader would be my guess.
Yeah.
Showing how nothing I know about being a stock trader, but that is my impression of how things go.
Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Just you were saying that this is why they want to talk to writers. So
right, they want to talk to writers, but also it's like when I talk to novelist friends, which thanks to book burners and meeting people like you and Max and the other, and Andrea and other people on our teams, like that was my entree into the fiction side of our business. I hear novelists and they're just like, Hollywood, they're just blowing smoke, just constantly. They call you up and they just lie to your face all the time. And I'm like, it's less that than you think. I mean, I'm not going to say that nobody from Hollywood ever just calls you up and lies to your face, because I'm sure people have called me up and lied to my face on things. But it's like, we're so excited about this project. We really want to get it made this year. And they are so excited about this project, and they do really want to get it made this year. And there are so many things outside of production companies' control, as well as the thing that are beyond your control. I had a project that we were pitching around, and it was a great pitch, a great team. Like everyone we had attached to it was just like gangbusters. We went in and like we were pitching to the right executive. Like she got it. She had the sensibility, and she's like, "Oh, I love this project so much." But she then had to bring it to her boss. And we found out later her boss had been passed over for an internal promotion at the company and was actively looking for another job where he would be, fully appreciated with the title that he deserved. But in the meantime, he was saying no to absolutely everything that came on his desk. And one of the producers I worked with actually were like, why is this doesn't make... And so he knew her boss's boss and had to do these like, look, I never go over an executive's head, but also like I felt like we had a really good thing. I don't know why we're getting the no here. And the Uber boss sort of said, it's like, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told everyone else who has called me this week, saying, look, you know that I never do this, but what the heck is going on at your company? And, by the time that guy moved on, the person who really liked our project had also moved on, and the new place she's at has a different mandate, and, she can't bring us in the same way. So it's just like, it's just bonkers, the number of things that happen. And, my coping mechanism is just sort of practicing a certain amount of conscious detachment. I've been writing for a lot of animated series lately, some stuff for kids, but also the new Blade Runner, Black Lotus, that was out recently. When you asked me for my most recent credit I could talk about, that's probably it. But
just Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Just Blade Runner.
Just Blade Runner. But most animated work that I've done, I do as a freelancer, because that's a lot more common on the animation side than on the live action side these days. So it's like, and I pitch a story, or they give me a story premise and say, hey, can you do something with this? And I write an outline, I write a draft, I maybe write a second draft, and then I send it to the head writer. And just, 2 years later, I'll get to tune into television and see how it turned out. But I'm just like, I'm going to give you the best script I can and know that I have no idea what's going to happen with it once it leaves my hands.
I remember that with Dark Crystal, where it was just like, Margaret, were we talking about Dark Crystal in Finland in whatever year that was? And she just like, puppetry takes time. It takes a lot of time.
Yes, while it is live action, it just does. Puppets are not fast, and they did gorgeous work on that show. It turned out so well, but like, man, there was no, on The Middleman, we were writing episodes as we were shooting them. So there's very much this sense of the train is heading down the tracks. And, if an episode stalls out at like the outline phase, it's like, no, we have to keep it moving because in X days, we have to send a script to a director to prep. And then a week later, we're going to start shooting. And this all has to be ready for that.
This is the Douglas Adams kind of production schedule. That's how he did Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on radio.
But that's actually, and that used to be standard. Like, that's the way every TV show is made. You're sort of like laying tracks frantically in front of the train as it goes. And with the streamers coming in and with episode orders getting shorter and with, I think some of this is probably lays at the feet of year-round development cycle, just that urgency is like, you'll write all, like Dark Crystal, we wrote all the scripts before they shot a frame of film. And then one of the head writers was basically in London doing all the production rewrites as things came up. And it's like, yeah, this is way too expensive. We can't do it. We'll need 15 different versions of the puppet to do this, or we don't have time to do this bit, and he was doing all of that. And he did a great job. And, our producing director, Louis Leterrier, who directed all of those episodes, like, I think it was a very collaborative process for them. But it's also like if we had been doing, we might have known some of these things by the time we got to later episodes and could have saved some of the rewrites. But at the same time, you have a full arc, and when you realize something in the last episode that you want to plant back in episode 3, you can still do that because it's not shot yet.
I remember quite a few screenwriters are talking about the benefit, quote unquote, of COVID, in that, well, shit, all we can do is write, because it's what we can do with not other people around, and we just have like our meetings. And so I think the Duffer Brothers, I remember we're talking about that with Stranger Things, where they were able to write the whole thing and say, oh crap, we want Eddie to actually be able to play the guitar so that we can have this great cool scene. So I think it gave a lot more depth maybe to some of those ones that maybe they're not, because we're used to your point, we're used to, oh shit, we have a weekly deadline and we have to hit it. I know that from, again, corporate work, where it's like, oh shit, every month we do 26 articles.
Right. Yeah, and some of that was certainly like in process before COVID, like Dark Crystal. We wrote it in 2017, even though I don't think it came out until 2019. But COVID was one of those things that accelerated it, and it was definitely when production just shut down. Development was one of the few things that people could still do. And so you did get a lot of development work, but it did create this kind of mass in the pipeline. And I think we're still kind of sorting through that because, immediately afterwards, it's like, I've got a great new pitch, and you're competing with everybody who has a pitch now and everyone who's had a pitch for the last year.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's like my kid at college who couldn't get one specific class because the freshman majors had precedence and they couldn't do it during COVID years. So the next year, freshmen and sophomores in that major had precedent for that class. And I don't know if they'll ever take the class because of the whole COVID pipeline, as you say. I love how you have the distance idea of not tying yourself emotionally, because I think writers of prose feel like our industry is the most thankless and the most cruel. But every time I feel bad about it, I think about Hollywood and I think, this is great, because I knew somebody.
We think about you, Margaret, all the time.
We do. You are hardcore, Margaret. I don't know how you keep that smile on your face.
No, the sunshine, the LA sunshine. That's all I can think.
Exactly. Because
hard-won level of zen, I have to say. Like, I was on the cruise, I was walking people through, like, this is the story of my career. It's like, and at this point, I am just visiting friends and crying on their front porch because I am crushed by what happened. Talking to you about it now, yes, I understand why it happened, but God, it was devastating at the time.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to a guy who was a screenwriter who'd written a novel, and he just told me, he's like, the novel's coming out. And I'm like, that's good. Yeah. He's like,
he said yes. that means it's coming out.
Yeah. It's like, you signed the contract, and so the novel's going to come out. And he's like, yeah, that's not how Hollywood works. It's like, you do this step of the work, and you do this step. And at any point along the way, it could be canceled. So he thought during the process of making a book that it would still happen. It's like, oh, cover design. Nobody can agree. Cut it. Kill the whole book.
They're going to cancel this book in copy edits. No, I think about that story you told me so often because it's so true. I had to learn, just celebrate every step because it might be the last one, and won't you feel silly for not enjoying the good part before it all went bad?
Well, and even as we saw most famously recently, what was it, Batgirl? They'll even make the whole thing, and it'll get buried. You'll never see it. And everyone will get paid, and that's why I think as novelists we're like, well, shit, at least everyone got paid. But you've put your heart and soul and sweat and tears into something that literally no one is ever going to see. And like, ooh, that's a lot.
I worked on a show that none of you have ever heard of called Day One, and the reason why you haven't heard of it, because this was like, NBC was very excited about the show. The creator was fresh off of Heroes at a time when Heroes was just like peak TV. And he'd created this really cool science fiction story with these, aliens come to Earth, and, we have to put together our team that's going to, help. But one of them's secretly an alien, and what happened on her planet, she's going to try to keep it from happening to Earth. I hope I'm not spilling secrets that Jesse didn't want to get out there, but it was also like 10 years ago, so like fingers crossed we're cool. But yeah, it's like they had hired a writer's room. I was the writer's assistant on that. We had a writer's office PA. We had like a researcher, I think was his title. We had a line producer. The line producer had an assistant. We had a trailer on the Universal lot where we drove in to work every day. And like, and I joke about like everyone's story about how do you get started in Hollywood contains, well, this never happens, but, and this is one of those this never happens but moments. The show like was rolling and they canceled it. We were like, we're sending in outlines and get nothing back. It was like the project had, because we were supposed to premiere after the Winter Olympics in like 2010. It was like big. And it's like, but we're not here. It's like we had enough momentum. Nobody wanted to make the show anymore. There had been enough sort of change in the upper offices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we had enough momentum that no one wanted to be responsible for killing us. And I used to joke, like, if they didn't need to renew our parking passes every quarter, like, somebody might have forgotten that the show even existed, and I still might be getting that assistant salary.
Yeah.
This feels like Murder on the Orient Express. It's like nobody wanted to kill it, so they all had a little hand in killing it.
A little hand in killing it. Yeah, I mean, also, that was sort of what it felt like at the time, and I think that was a factor, but also, like, about 2 years later, Comcast acquired Universal, and that's when we all started stopping and said, oh, this was also making the balance sheets look more attractive for that merger to go through, which is why when they announced Batgirl, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been caught in that accounting before.
It so sucks. And again, coming from, right, I do corporate writing as my day job, and I'm just like, that has happened so many times, where it has nothing to do with you, it has nothing to do with the quality of the work, it is all about the end of the day, oh shit, we have to show the stockholders that this is an attractive, beautiful, wonderful thing. We have to fire everybody. I had a place actually that would fire everyone, like every 6 months would fire a bunch of people and then would rehire them. They would ask you what tour you were on, which is very similar to Hollywood because everyone's a freelancer. You're all freelancers for this very reason. Oh shit, we got to make the books look good. Everyone's fired.
Everyone's fired. Yeah. Ugh. I just, like, my heart goes out to, like, everything that's going on at Warner Discovery right now, the huge turnover that's been happening at Netflix recently, and it's just, like, but, it's like I'm working with an exec on a project now who used to be at Netflix, and, now has landed at this new studio, and so, yeah, it's just the circle of life continues.
Yeah.
So while it's very frustrating and should make all writers at least, get some perspective, all prose writers, excuse me, One thing I still don't understand, even though I can't talk about anything, I'm like embroiled in it. Can you take us through the various steps of, say, an option?
Okay.
So it's like when people say someone's bought an option and they're gonna tie a name to it, like George Martin or James Cameron or Steven Spielberg. Yeah, that's basically they gave the author some money and then they said maybe this thing will happen and we'll tie a name to it to make it sound good. But yeah.
They're putting together the team, Mer.
Oh, the team, yes.
Over to you, Margaret. Yeah.
And so I know that level, and I am not fooling myself on any of it. But I do know what they say, as Cameron said. They do like to meet, and they do like to say nice things. They do like to compliment you, which feels great.
Yeah,
but compliments, don't. That they don't come with something you can take to the bank and pay your bills with.
One of my grad school friends said one time, it's like, you can starve to death on praise in this town. Like, there are a lot of people, a lot of talented people who, for whatever reason, just don't have professional careers, but it doesn't mean you're not a good writer.
Yeah. So we can you walk us through that process of what if somebody said had Hollywood interested in their rights? Mm-hmm. What are the steps? Where does it go?
Okay, well, if you say you've been approached and it's like, this is an option and they're going to pay you, some $1,000 for, hopefully they're paying you money for this option.
Or else you should not sign the contract.
They better be, Margaret!
They better. Yeah. You will also, I feel like we're seeing more called shopping agreements.
We are. We hate them, Margaret. We hate them.
Okay, wait. Is anything made from cold shopping agreements?
Is what?
Yeah. Is anything actually made from cold shopping agreements?
I mean, sure.
My agent has seen them done from shopping agreements.
Yeah,
okay.
it does happen.
So explain to us what cold shopping agreements are.
Okay. I just usually hear it referred to as a shopping agreement, but cold or warm or what have you.
It's all terrible. Terrible shopping agreement.
I mean, the one advantage that an author has on the shopping agreement is what an option is, you are optioning your rights for a set period to say a producer or a production company, and you're like, okay, for $10,000, just to pull a number out of thin air, we are going to take the right to option. We have the option of turning this into a TV show. And if you're working with a production company, usually what that means is they are spending that option period bringing someone on board to write the pilot, taking it out to networks, shopping it around, basically trying to put together that sort of thing so that they can get the yes that's going to be a studio or a network, and they're the people with a ton of money who are going to actually make a show. And at that point, all the things, because an option is actually, it's a pretty robust sort of thing, because in that contract, you agree to, if we sell to a broadcast network, if we sell to a streamer, if we sell to a basic cable thing, like titles, money, all of that is set. And that means that once that's set, the producer, they take it to Netflix. Netflix says, yes, we want to make this. And it's great. And then the option activates. And, and whatever was agreed to in those initial negotiations, that's what everybody's got.
The first step.
The first step of your option,
right.
And then if you make it to air, all those other things. But that contract has already been agreed to. So there's no negotiation as far as the author is concerned at that point, until you get to greater steps or renewals, when you run for years and years and all that fun stuff. The potential, and it is very much a thing on the shopping agreement, is generally the production company is not giving you any money up front. But when they make the deal with the studio, then you are making your deal directly with the studio. So you are making the deal with the person you're actually dealing with, and not the you're sort of saying, well, the option, you're doing all of your potentialities. On the shopping agreement, they're like, okay, we sold it to Netflix. And then your agent goes in and they try to squeeze Netflix for every red cent that they can manage. But they're making that with Netflix, and potentially, if you and Netflix can't come to an agreement, then the entire thing falls apart. Because now the producer doesn't have they don't have the underlying IP anymore. So you can potentially get a better deal when you're negotiating with someone who is actually making the show, as opposed to the hypothetical deal of, if we make the show, this is what we'll pay you.
But the hypothetical deal will pay out. Not out, but when someone buys your option and it's not a shopping agreement, they send you the money. And then they go off and do their thing.
I don't blame any author who's like, no, if you want to shop this around, you option it, and then you have the option money, as opposed to the, it's like, in both cases, you're going to get paid. It's just when you do that negotiation, and you have more leverage in the negotiation with people who want to make your show. Did that make any sense at all?
It did, and actually, you've made the only positive argument for a shopping agreement.
Yeah,
but
that's the best one I've heard.
I'm still not convinced, and this is why. In that, I have said to people who came back to me and said, "I want a shopping agreement." I could say to them, "You know what? I'll tell you if I ever option this. But in the meantime, you are free to go find some money. I love you. You're great. I think we'd work great together. Go find some money. I'll let you know if I've optioned." And it sucks for them, right? Because you do all this work. We're ready to go. But then it would suck for me too to have something that someone says, "Oh, I have $20,000 or $100,000, and we're going to go straight to development." So it's like I feel like there's ways to negotiate that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, like, I sat down because, like, I was seeing more shopping agreements, kind of like other friends talking about them, knowing about them on the side, and just being like, well, what advantage would there ever be to the shopping agreement? And I think it is that if it does, you've got the leverage of, you can hold out for more once the other side has more skin in the game. So when you're negotiating with the studio and you're like, well, if I don't get X, Y, or Z, I'm going to walk. Your producers are very motivated to go to the studio and be like, please give Kameron everything she wants, because none of us
all want to get paid.
Because we all want to get it made. Yeah. Whereas opposed to, if you play hardball at the option stage, it's like, well, this is kind of difficult. We'll go option something else.
Yeah. The thing is, I think people try to sell it as, those guys who say, hey, if I told you I could give you $100 today or $200 next year, what would you say? And then if you say $100 today, they ask you all sorts of questions, but they don't actually listen to the answers. Like, I'm strapped for cash. That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Or, I've got a bill due. I would really appreciate that $100 now.
You're going to be in 2 years. Yeah.
But it's like, what they're saying is you guarantee the $200 next year. With the shopping agreement, that sounds like what they're saying, except there's no guarantee.
There is no guarantee.
So when someone comes to you with an option to do all of this admittedly less aggressive contracting, I still think it's the best idea, because it's, I mean, it's actually money. It actually occurs, while the other one may never do
it's
so.
Free money for us, yeah.
You go to the grocery store and you go, no, they're shopping an agreement. This will all be paid for later, I promise.
Excuse me, sir. I have a shopping agreement. Can I please get this car off your lot? Look, it's from Hollywood. So they're going to pitch to Warner Brothers tomorrow.
It absolutely is, but I think that sort of ties into something, Kameron, you and I were talking about before we went on air, and that it ties into, like, what do you want out of your interactions with Hollywood? Like, absolutely. If the good point of Hollywood for you, it's like, look, I want someone, I would like some option money. Ideally, this show will eventually get made, and I will get a little bit of cash for having the underlying, having created the underlying story. And then, I'm going to sell a boatload of books because it's going to be super popular and everyone's going to read the books. And that's my back end on it. if, if maybe you're looking to, I would like to transition to write, novels, but also write for TV. In that case, if a producer comes to you and is like, look, because production companies are not necessarily rolling in cash. These are independent producers. They only get paid when they get something made. And so it's like, look, I don't have a lot of cash for an option, but if we do a shopping agreement, and one of the things that, when we make this, and again, get shit in writing in your shopping agreement, but the sort of thing is like, you'll get to write a freelance episode in the first season if this ever goes to series. And I always say, it's like, if you're looking to sell IP to make a career transition, lobbying really hard to write the pilot might not be your best move, because you want someone to write the pilot who is going to get the show picked up and made to series. And then, if you're a member of that writing staff, not only are you going to get a credit out of that by the end of the season, but also you're spending time in either an actual room or a virtual room with a bunch of TV writers who you can hang out with and show it's like, hey, I'm good at what I do. I'm someone who's pleasant to be around. And you do all of that. I'm getting a notification.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm sorry, I should have set this up on Zoom. I'll just set it up again when Google kills it. I'll kill it now.
Kill it.
Okay. I'll kill it dead.
No, we're coming back, people.
Yeah, we're coming back
live.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I should have seen that coming. I'm not new at this, but apparently, after we stop putting stuff, go away. Anyway, Margaret, I'm so sorry.
I'm just kicking myself. Like, I'm a TV writer who, like, I've written things with commercial breaks. I should be able to set up a better act out.
Coming next, we're going to talk about once you get it out of option, going into development hell. Yeah.
But yeah, so you're just working with, a bunch of people. It's like, oh, this is someone we'd like to work with in the future. And that's probably a better basis of making a career transition than, let me write the pilot and prove to you that I've, that I am a genius, which you undoubtedly are. But,
But are we recording? Sorry, before we start pontificating, are you recording this? Are you recording this, Mer?
Yes, I believe we're still recording. Yes, we're still recording.
Because I'm not saying the third time.
Damn it, we're gonna record. But no, I mean, that is a good point. And again, coming from my corporate writing background, you can say I'm a writer and I'm a novelist. I can write a blog post. You cannot fucking write a blog post. Let me tell you, because I have seen blog posts from people who write novels, let alone a screenplay. They are completely different modes. And I think a lot of people just assume, you're a writer. You can write anything, you precious little bird. And that's bullshit. Every single one of these things is a completely different mode. It's true. I have tried to write. I am a novelist. And I'm like, I could, again, I write short videos and shit for corporate stuff. But I know my heart is in novels. I love my description. I love my world building. Exceptional screenwriting is absolutely a completely different wheelhouse, and it takes time to learn that skill, just like it does to write an award-winning blog post. All those things are different. Yeah, award-winning.
No. I was about to ask if they did, and then I realized you totally did win an award for a blog post. So I'll just shut up.
Did, Mer. Yep.
Yeah, but no, it is, like, I think the skills are very transferable. Like, having a background in fiction writing is an asset to, figuring out being a screenwriter. It's, better than starting cold, but there are still skills to learn, and certainly vice versa, as, Mer can probably speak to on the Book Burners side, which was, my graduate fiction writing course.
You were fine. I think the biggest differences among us had to do with tone, and that was we had two literary people and two people who were more interested in humor, and the line was clearly drawn. The only surprise in that project was the fact that the literary guy got a chance to write sci-fi and went wild.
Oh my god, dude.
Very excited. And he wrote great. He did great. Like horror. And we were just like, are you serious? You don't write this regularly? But yeah, it's like Margaret and I were writing fun stuff. Yeah, we still do conflict and shit. We're professionals, but you know, we were not as literary as our compatriots in that first season. But no, I did not have that feeling of, oh my god, a screenwriter, tell us the color of his shirt, for God's sake. No, I didn't do that.
I hate having to decide what color shirts people are wearing.
That's someone else's decision, goddammit. Yeah.
God damn it, that's a wardrobe thing, and I stay in my lane. Like, it was even a transition when I went from writing live action to writing for animation, where I learned that, like, if we had an action scene on The Middleman or Eureka or something like that, you could just sort of say, it's like, they get into a big fight, and this is what happens, and this is the thing. And in animation, you really have to step it out. It's much more blow by blow, and in part, that's because when your script gets sent to the storyboard artists, they get their assignment comes by number of pages. And if you've taken that much page to write a huge fight scene, that is a crap ton of work for them. Like, they have to do a lot of boards for that, so you want your page count to be more commensurate with the sort of art load that you're putting in there. And writing for puppets, also slightly different, it turns out.
Also slightly different, yeah. What else was I thinking of? Writing for... There was something else. But it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a big thing for me. Just writing for video, writing for radio ads. Those long, flowy sentences, right? Well, we'll just da-da-da-da. And then you have to take a breath. I had my first call, right? I was a new baby writer. Had my first call with the talent for a radio thing, and he's just like, taking the breath, and I'm like, oh shit, I have to write like these concise, sentences that they can actually get out all this stuff. And you have to write a certain word count because it's a certain number of pages, a certain amount of time on the air. It's just extremely different. You're thinking about much different things than you do with any other type of media.
Yeah, learning how to not solve dialogue problems by just throwing more words at it is like that has been like, I feel like that's been an embarrassingly recent level up for me.
I'm sorry. Can you say throw more words at it? You mean more words in dialogue or more words in script guidance or what?
No, like in the actual line, like this line isn't working, so I'll add more words to it so that the intent will be more clear, or so it'll play, or it'll be like, and like much more frequently, if a line isn't playing, it's because it's too long rather than it being too short.
Yeah, I'm working on an audio drama right now. If you could, let's stop the podcast entirely and you walk me through my problems I'm having, because I was like going through today and I'm like, yeah, that's not clear. I'm gonna add like 3 more words there, and
yeah, well, because that's the way it works in prose, right? You put in more words, but like finding that conciseness, finding something that will sit in an actor's mouth. One of the weirdly unique challenges to when I was working on the Nebula Awards ceremony is most presenters would just, write their own thing. But, if we had Adam Savage is not writing his own script, I'm sure he could, but it's sort of like no, you're doing this thing and we're going to write a script for you. And it was thank God I've spent hundreds of hours of my life watching Mythbusters. So I'm like, no, I can write it so it sounds like the way that Adam Savage talks.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, I will ask one of the questions I have for Margaret then, which is, again, this goes back to the many conversations we all have about, with Hollywood. And how is it, again, and you've talked about, I give my heart to these projects and then they get killed and my heart is staked and I want to die.
Yeah.
How does everyone in Hollywood, and I think it's the sun, but how does everyone in Hollywood stay so optimistic and keep going and still have the emotional, ability to have a project of their heart after seeing so many projects of their heart that have fallen along the wayside?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in fairness, a lot of people in Hollywood are also very bitter and unpleasant. So
Thank God! Thank God! It's good to hear. I'm in good company then. All right.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. It can be a completely demoralizing business. And when I was starting out, I always hated the people who would like come to talk to a bunch of film school students and be like, "Hollywood's terrible. You should all leave." And I'm like, "Yeah, Bucko, why aren't you doing something else? Like, you know, screw you." But it was like, when I was early in my career, I got like my first job on The Middleman. I wrote a freelance episode of that show, but my official job, I was the writer's assistant. And it was it was my first job in television. It was a tremendous opportunity. It was my postgraduate seminar in how to be a TV writer. I got so much out of it. And then that show got canceled after its first season. And so I didn't get promoted to staff writer after that because there was no show to be promoted on. But one of the writers went on to another show and they needed a writer's assistant. It was like, "Oh, we had this great one on my last show. You should totally hire her." I go in to meet them. We were going out to New York and I owned a winter coat and they hired me. I swear to God, I think that was the moment I nailed the job interview.
No, I completely understand that. Yeah.
You never know what's going to be. Y'all have the right outfit.
It was like,
Mara, do you? Yeah.
"Hello, New York in winter." And I said, "I went to college in Massachusetts. I own a winter coat." And like after that, everything just sort of relaxed. I'm like, I think I have this job. And
Nice.
indeed I did. And that show got canceled after 10 episodes. And so, you know, and then Day One happened and that show got canceled after no episodes. And then I got brought on to, I had met Amy Berg through mutual friends and they needed a new writer's assistant on Eureka. And it's like, great, it's not a first season show. Like once you're past that hurdle, like your chances of getting renewed are much better. But I came in like season 4 and it's like, oh man, like 6 people need to die for me for like there to be a slot to promote me.
So wait, this is a monarchy? It's a monarchy?
I mean, writers' room are very hierarchical, and so like there's definitely a ladder, and I'm looking like, who do you owe favors to? The room's already big, you know, and it's just sort of like, you know, I'm not saying I'm sitting there at my computer also sharpening my knives, but you know,
No, of course not. Of course not.
No, certainly
Just saying, hey, you know, something bad happened. Hey, be good for me.
You know, somebody got, you know, hopefully somebody, you know, an upper level sells a show and takes half the
Exactly.
And
Everyone
that would
gets
be great.
promoted. Hooray!
But like by that time, I was like, by the time I was doing my 5th season on my 4th show in a little less than 3 years, and it's like I have more on-set experience than mid-level producers who I am junior to on this show. I have been on more shows, you know, period, than, you know, upper-level people who are running this show, and like, I was just reaching the point where I was frustrated. You know, it's like, I just hang in there long enough. And I'm like, how long do I have to hang in there for this? And I was getting frustrated. I was getting burned out because like, I'd sort of, all the great learning I had done on those first couple of shows. It's like, no, I know how this works now. This is no longer a, you know, oh kid, why don't you learn how to do this? It's like, I've done that. I wish you appreciated that fact, but my title is assistant, so not so much, maybe. Eureka, I don't mean to throw shade at it. There are many lovely people on that show. I was just reaching the point where it's like,
at that point, yeah.
It was turning me into an unpleasant person, and the smart thing that I did at that point was I'm like, this could be the end of my career, but the next time I'm in a writer's room, I need to be a writer in it. I can't keep being an assistant. And, you know, the next show could have been the one where I got my promotion. You start climbing the ladder the way the TV writer career is supposed to work. Could have been the next show. You know, could have been another 8-10 years. Like, there's no way to know, but like, if I had a bitter writer's, this is like, I know that it starts to show at a certain point. Like, I wouldn't promote that person. And so, yeah, I had to do these, like, no, I'm not really doing writer's assistant jobs anymore. I feel like I have learned what I can. And after that was when Lizzie Bennett came along. And then also in that era was Book Burners, and the truly hard to explain part of Margaret's career path that, you know, looking backwards, it's all very logical how I got to where I am today. At the time, it was a lot of like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if a bus ever comes along this road. Like, am I in a boat in a fog bank waiting for a bus? It just, like, all the metaphors were incredibly mixed and none of them were auspicious.
So I finally remembered my question, and it has specifically to do with plot on script writing. Because what reminded me was the fact that you were talking about how you need to reduce the number of words rather than increase. And I suffer from, maybe I've just had too many notes of what the hell are you talking about, but I suffer from feeling that people are not going to understand what I talk about, so I'm just going to cover all the bases.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about, have you seen Schitt's Creek?
Not really.
Okay, well, there's a scene where there's a very new relationship, and there's like one of the guys living in a motel, and there's a murder at the motel. No, there's a death. It's not that exciting. There's a death at the motel, and someone says, "We need your room because there's a death in this room." And so he goes to his new, like, romance, and he's like, I need to stay at your place. And the guy thinks that they're gonna be, that this is a sex thing, and he's like, I'm not ready for that yet. And that is the conflict for the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then once everybody knows all the things that everybody's supposed to know, and it's all settled, I don't know where the guy stayed that night. And this bothers me. Because there's still the dead body. There's still this other conflict. And I'm like, is this me? Is this sloppy writing on their part? Is it like, I'm supposed to know that the conflict is the fact that you've got an experienced guy and a non-experienced guy, and they're trying to, like, go through their new relationship, and it's that conflict. But where's he sleeping? I don't know. And I don't know if, is it me or is it them?
I mean,
I love that this is Mer's question.
What? I really want to know.
No,
Look, I over-explain things. I want to know if I worry that the conflict is something different.
I mean, I'll also say it's very possible that there was a line or a scene at some point that clarified that question that got cut at some point. There is a certain amount of, and it varies, right? Like, I feel like in film, there's a lot more of letting you kind of fill in the gaps, like the same way the gutter between frames works on a comic page. In television, we do have an awareness that you're probably, like, doing the dishes or looking at your phone or something else. Especially in kids' TV, most things do get said aloud. There's not a ton of, like, characters don't exchange looks with each other in children's television because your audience isn't necessarily, like, they're not film literate yet. So you have to tell them what's going on or they're not gonna know. And, you know, for laundry folding TV, like, if there's an important clue that is important to understand what's going on, someone's gonna say it out loud as well as having a close-up on it just to make sure that that lands. Because, you know, at best, someone's paying like 85% attention to what's going on the screen. But, like, there's also it could have been that, like, it's been through enough drafts and everybody who was working on that episode knew where he spent the night, so it didn't feel like an important piece of information. It could be, yeah, I mean, I always get bothered when people on TV shows get into a car and they don't fasten their seatbelt. And it's like, I know, like, production-wise, like, it's a long thing. It's a weird action. It messes with continuity. It's, you know, wrinkling the clothes. But I'm like, buckle your seatbelt. Like, every time I get into a car, what's the first thing I do? I buckle the seatbelt, and it feels weird to see these people who just get into cars and don't buckle seatbelts. It's like they live in this weird parallel universe. So I have no idea if it's a you thing or a them thing, but it's also, there's so many moving pieces. And sometimes, like, you'll be in production and you have a pivotal scene that you don't have time to shoot, or you lose a location, or you lose a guest star, and you have to, like, on the fly, have to come up with a new thing that's going to cover all of your bases and make it work, and hopefully it does, and hopefully if it hopefully if there are gaps, they're like, well, at least hopefully they'll make it to the refrigerator after they watch the episode before they're going like, where did he spend the night anyway? Like,
so basically, I think another of the hardest things for prose writers to understand about Hollywood is just the fact that there's so many moving pieces that whatever you wrote or whatever you intended could be completely tossed out once you see it. And that's another thing you have to come to terms with.
Well, when we worked on Bookburners, you and some other people on the team would come as like, Margaret, you're so strong on structure, and like I don't think of myself as intuitively a structuralist. It's like I like a good scene, I like a moment, but television and film writing is so structure dependent, and I started thinking about like, well, it's like I'm good at structure because I force myself to concentrate on it a lot. In all due modesty, I'm quite good at structure because I've spent a lot of time working on it.
Can we say you're Emmy award winning? We can say that, right?
I've worked for Emmy award winning projects would be, I think.
You've worked for Emmy award winning projects. So I'm just going to say, just backing up what you said, yes, you're very good at what you do.
But I think the reason why screenwriting and television writing, why it is so structurally dependent is like, that's the thing that's going to survive. Like, you can have great dialogue and it's a wonderful medium for that, but, the cast might decide that they like it when they say it this way better, and depending on who that cast member is, that may or may not stick. So it's like, locations are going to change, production constraints are going to mean you have to change these three other things. Like, the story structure, like, if you can keep that solid, the other bits that kind of like might be falling off around the edges, as long as there's nothing fundamentally broken, your story still works and you can kind of get away with the magic trick. So
that
I would say,
fascinating.
Likely that was, it's not outside the realm of possibility that answering that question did just fall off the radar, but it's like, it
was probably one of those things.
Basically worked, so we're going to let that go.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are coming close to 2 hours. Y'all have been very awesome.
We love it.
Yes. Is there anything else you want to tell us about, can you sum up everything you know about Hollywood that we haven't talked about in like the next couple of seconds, or?
Anytime I have encountered someone in Hollywood who is not behaving well or not treating me well, 90+% of the time, I ask myself, could this be explained by this person feeling wildly insecure right now? And the answer is almost always yes. And I think that just explains a lot of weirdness in Hollywood, that nobody knows when their next job is coming from. Nobody knows what's going to happen and what's not. And even if they are outwardly secure, they might not feel that way. And that explains a lot of people's strange behavior.
That is fascinating. Thank you, Margaret. Cameron, tell us about yourself, because these people have never seen you before.
They don't know who I am. No, Margaret, I just want to say it was a joy to talk to you. I'm so glad we had you on the show. Again, we bitch about this with you privately, but it was nice to, share these insights.
It's nice to be here. I really enjoyed it.
I just always been talking. Like, there's a reason. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you. Probably. So it's good to know. But again, appreciate your time. Really lovely conversation. Lovely to speak with you. But yeah, I am Kameron Hurley. I write shit. You can, of course, find me at CameronHurley.com. I have a podcast as well, Get to Work Hurley, where I also interview wonderful guests like Margaret. And Murr, in fact.
That's
Murr's
right. I'm more recent.
Been live, my one with Murr. So just a delight. So thank you, again, for being on here. And thank you, Murr, for having me co-host again.
Yeah, Margaret, thank you so much for your time and your awesome wisdom. And Cameron, thank you again for helping out Ditch Diggers. We would not be where we are without you.
One ditch at a time.
That's right.
One ditch at a time. If you take away anything, friends, dig one ditch at a time.
This podcast was produced under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives License. Music provided by Devo Spice, devospice.com.
Ditch Diggers!
This is a free podcast brought to you by the kindness of our patrons. If you would like to also be kind and a patron, go to patreon.com/mightymur.